Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Fly With Us podcast. This podcast is bringing the art of conversation, self-love, self-care, mental health care and protection, life lessons, love lessons, and everything in between. Today we are joined by our special guest from Speak Woman magazine, Miss Shonda Campbell. I'm Lady Bounce.
And I am A. Slate.
All right, this is so beautiful. We finally got you on. I'm so excited. So, Slate's gonna hit us off with our Mindfulness Minute to get us started.
Okay, our Mindfulness Minute this week is the human animal. The quote says, "I commit myself to the practice, whether I find great flashes of inspiration or sit with my perplexity. I acknowledge what I do not know, and I sit here in all my partiality and incompleteness." As spiritual seekers and as students of philosophy, we have accustomed ourselves to looking for great moments of illumination or flashes of inspiration. This actually becomes an addictive tendency, the need for the next fix. We neglect the silences, the places of murkiness, the negative spaces of self. Today, realize that there will be silence, that you will face certain problems as a human being, and among these, some turbulent emotions. But sit here for a few minutes in the darkness, changing nothing, improving nothing. Just be a quiet terrestrial mammal, breathing in and out. So let's calm our human animal, stay hungry, and keep moving. That's our Mindfulness Minute for this week.
Woo! Fire!
I know, right? When I read that, I said, come through, because we do neglect those moments of silence, and we have this tendency to think that silence is a bad thing. I gotta have the noise, I gotta have the chatter and the clutter. And really, sometimes you don't. Like, I talk a lot, and sometimes I get on my own nerves. I'm like, I just want to be quiet today. Like,
you better say it.
I'm working on it, y'all. Okay. So Shonda, finally we got you on the show. I have so many questions. I was running out of space to write stuff down. But first and foremost, how did you come up with the magazine Speak Woman, and why that title?
Wow. So it is really a mouthful. So long story short, I am a domestic violence survivor. And out of all of that, I was really close to my mother. And I always thought that my mother had the speed dial of Jesus, because this woman prayed and things manifested. And I lost her. She passed away. And honestly, I was suicidal. I wouldn't be here today if it was not for God. And out of that, I understood that something has to change. And then over time, as I began to grieve, because I was going through it, you know what I'm saying? And as I was going through it, I looked at my children, and they were going through it, on top of losing their first mom. It wasn't even their second mom, it was their first mom, because I didn't know what I was doing. On top of losing that, then their mother is broken. And so it was in that moment, and I said, God gave me these children. I'm a single parent, and if I leave this place, then they're going to be messed up. And so out of that, I literally felt my mother, the strength of my mother, and the Holy Spirit just telling me that something has to change. And we're always looking for somebody else. We always say, well, if somebody would, we just need somebody. And God really spoke to me and said, you are that somebody. I've always been a fighter. I've always been the one to speak up and say things. And like you say, I talk all the time, but God really transformed my mind, and really understanding that if I'm going to do something, for one, it's going to be for God. And then for two, it's going to be for change. And understanding that our words are things. God didn't give us a chair, a tree, or whatever. Somebody thought, and somebody said, we need something. And so by that, and the power of being a woman, let alone a Black woman, that's a whole nother sermon right there. But understanding that we as women, we birth change, and not just physically, but what we say. We can change the room. And so Speak Woman was really declaring that when you're depressed, when you're down, when you're whatever, the enemy wants you to be silent. And my declaration is open your mouth, speak, woman. And so that was the core of it. And God just took off with it.
You better speak, woman.
Period.
And see what you just said is like, it makes me go back to that mindfulness minute, how I'm sitting there like, you're supposed to sit in those murky moments and those quiet moments, because you can get those downloads and hear what the Most High God has to say for you, has to say to you. So I just think that's just beautiful. I love it.
And that's what, like, when you were saying that, I was literally like, I get excited and I'm like, okay, Sean, sit still, because it's so important to understand that the trick of the enemy, like, I'm a Christian and I understand that the enemy, Satan, he wants to be like God. You know what I'm saying? Anything that is like God. So he wants the opposite of whatever God wants. So God wants us to speak. So the enemy wants us to be quiet. You know what I'm saying? And not only be quiet with ourselves, but to fill ourselves with noise and distractions. That's why we don't like quiet, because we really have to sit in it and really look at ourselves. When we are distracted, just like everything that's going on in the world, there's so many distractions, but to be able to be still and be silent, then you can figure out your own stuff. And then once you work through your own stuff, then you can understand how to help somebody else.
I love that you say you're doing it for God and you're doing it to help somebody else. I mean, because sometimes we speaking, but we got to also remember that life and death is in the power of the tongue. So I love that you've taken some time to sit down. As one of my sisters say, she sits with herself. She's like, I want to sit with myself. You have sat with yourself in some probably trying times. You said losing your mother. And then I know that you're a survivor of domestic violence. How has that impacted Speak Woman? Or how has it propelled it? Or maybe at times, has it ever hindered it in any way? Or how has that contributed to Speak Woman?
Wow, that term, sit with yourself, that is a powerful term, because in that I begin to peel back layers and I understand that the reason for my choice in men, or it was a distraction. It was not to connect with somebody who's going to further my purpose or where we can support. It was to numb a certain feeling. So I thought in my pain, I was reaching out, you know what I'm saying, to other people that were toxic, and I had to really sit with myself and say, why is this? Just all these horrible stigmas of Black people can't get together, or women saying, well, I don't have female friends. This is another issue. So all of that played a part in me choosing a partner that was abusive. All of that played a part in, and I understood by sitting with myself that there was physical abuse, emotional, all of that, but then other types of abuse that I didn't even know was abuse. So with that, by sitting with myself, and I really understand that Speak Woman is more than a business, it's a ministry. And there are things that, I have my business brain, then I have my ministry brain. And I understand that when dealing with domestic violence, that's a ministry, because not a lot of people know how to handle the topic, know how to be educated about it. So I understand that the platform that I have for my business is to promote information. We perish for the lack of knowledge. So to be able to have all of these issues and dealing with domestic violence, and I'm talking to other women that have gone through it, that I'm able to educate and say, and they say, you know what, I never really thought that was domestic violence, but it was, so all of that in my experience, I was able to heal, and it's a daily journey. It's not like, you wake up and you're okay. There's certain triggers and PTSD things that pop up, and I'm able to identify them and say, okay, I'm not condemning the fruit of it, but I'm getting to the root of it. Why is that? Yeah. And so that has played a part in domestic violence, in mental health, in everyday life, in business, in raising kids, whatever it is, that part played a part. So my experience with domestic violence is to say to women that I'm not talking at you, I'm not talking down to you, but I'm talking to you. We here. We went through the same thing. We here. And it makes them to be able to open up and really allow, God to do what he does in them. So it's not me fixing them or whatever, but it's just me opening up my wounds and showing my scars so that they can look in the mirror and say, I'm hurting too.
Transparency, that's beautiful.
That is absolutely beautiful, because I say that all the time, even when I'm working with my students and I'm telling them stories. I can't, tell them something that I've never been through. So a lot of stuff that they go through, because I've been through it, I can say, look, I understand. And then as a parent, I can tell them, this is why your mom is saying what she's saying. And then I can look at them as a kid and go, I know why you're doing what you're doing. Let's see if we can find some kind of medium spot where you and your mom can meet, you know, in the middle. Because your mom is always going to be your mom. She's going to be that protector. She's going to be the one telling you what to do. You're always going to want to buck it and rebel against it instead of listening. So let me tell you, I've been on both sides of that. Let's walk through this together, because at the end of it, you're going to be a better kid. And maybe, just maybe, that will change your mama's mindset and make her a better mother for you at this moment.
Absolutely. Because sometimes, you know, those kids have to teach us how to be parents, you know, so that's it.
Exactly. I tell all the time that freshmen can teach. Because little kids are, even not even just little kids, especially teenagers, they can teach you a lot. We have to learn to speak each other's language. Now, I know that you said that you're a mother and you're a businesswoman, and I know that can be a little bit of balance with being a new mother all over again. I'm trying to find the balance in this. How do you balance that? How do you wear all these scarves and turbans and can still be beautiful and keep going?
Listen, first of all, God. Second of all, my mama. But thirdly, understanding that for me, my mother always, like, my mother never cussed at me. You know, the worst thing she called me was a wench, and like I was in tears. Like but she would get on my behind. She would whip my behind, all of that. But she would give me a whooping, and then she would sit down and she would say, now, let me tell you why I whooping you. And I'm like, let me tell you, you know what I'm saying? So, and it wasn't like, okay, before I whoop you, I'm going to talk to you, then whoop you. She was like, no, cause and effect. You're going to get this whooping, but then you're going to get this information. So for me, just learning and gleaning from her, and not only her, just other elders and mothers and people around me, understanding that a lot of people, when we have kids, it's a stressor. Like raising kids, that's not for the weak. I don't care how old you are. You have to be a special kind of crazy to raise some kids. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? You have to be, because you have to be so many people all the time, you know. And so understanding that, I understood, I watched my kids, you know, each kid is different. And so as I was going through my pain and my issues, because I went through my crazy phase, I went through my phase that, you know, that's why I said my mother was such a support. But understanding that when I start something, it's not me starting something. It's me and my kids. So my children, and I researched, my mentor, when I started my business, she said, you need to research billionaires, because I always tell people I got money. I go to the bank, I say, you got my billions yet? And she'd be like, girl, you crazy, you got $2, get out of here. You know what I'm saying? But I spoke that. And so with my kids, I would say, okay, this is a business. You don't have to be a part of it if you don't want to. I do a million things. My kids aren't always there, but this is what we are doing. You know, that's what millionaires do. You know what I'm saying? And so just like over in Britain, when that baby is born, that baby is already somebody. Mm-hmm. So I put that in my kids. Like my daughter is my executive assistant. My son is my head of security. So I went and I take them with me to do things. And then they're like, okay, mom, this is why you work 35 hours a day. You know what I'm saying? This is why you hustle. This is why you do what you do. But I also understand the impact that, because they've seen women and men come up and they're crying and they're this or they're that, and they have a moment and I'm talking to them and they'll be like, you know what, mom? So their compassion level is at an all-time high. They can feel and they can empathize. So it is a family business. And then once they go on, I always tell them, you can do what you want to do, but you will own it. My son was interested in, you know, he got tired of me fighting over all these cars and having these issues with cars. He was like, you know what, mama? I'm gonna learn how to fix cars. I said, you do that, son, but guess what? You're gonna own the shop. How about that? You know what I'm saying? So we talk about all of these other things. My daughter's a dancer. She does the same thing. So for me, it's not a business, it's a lifestyle. We are so used to being broke. We are so used to living broke that we put that in our kids. I refuse. The buck stops with me. My kids will not go through the pains and issues that I went through. So it's a family business, and that's how we get along.
love it. I love
I
it.
love it.
I'm still trying
I
to
love
get
to talk, y'all. So y'all have to be like, give me the church finger.
Yes, you are all right.
We wanted you here. We want you to talk. It's so often you are interviewing other women and we hear their voices. We don't get to hear yours. So we really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm a talker. I had to know to step back sometimes. I just get excited. Like, I just want to ask you questions. Like, I do want to ask one before, Lady, I hope you don't mind, Lady Bounce.
Go ahead.
But recently, you interviewed one of the richest women in our community. It's so rich in culture, so rich in grace and beauty and wisdom and knowledge. You interviewed Mama Nozipo, and I want to know, I think I can assume why, but I still have to ask, what was your inspiration and why did you choose to interview her, and how was that? And what impact do you think it will have on the community, young women, older women? What impact do you think it will have?
Wow. That is an amazing question. I'm so glad you touched on it, because understanding, like my mother used to tell me, and I must reference my mama all the time. She used to tell me that every solution or every problem has a solution, so it all comes back to the word. So I understand that the enemy wants to divide us. He wants to divide us by color, by class, by age, by whatever, culture, whatever. So I really asked God, okay, in my space, because Speak Woman was created to promote positivity. Not everything is positive, but we have to change the perspective, every perspective. So I said, God, what is it that I need to do with my little piece of the pie to push out positivity about the issues that we have been going through for generations? I'm a historian, and so I really understand, and my mother pushed in me the history of Blackness, the history of Black women, the history of our strength. And I said, okay, God, put somebody in that place. Like, I don't know anybody like that. And her face literally popped up. I had ran into her at a march or rally, and I was like, you know what? So I was like, okay, she knows this person and this person knows this person. So I literally tracked Mama Nozipo down, and I called her. They was like, sure, she'd love to talk to you. So I'm like, okay, I called her and I said, Mama Nozipo, we need your wisdom. I understand that I have been around for almost 40 years and I know a lot, but I don't know everything, and not only do we need your wisdom as far as being an elder, but she is from Africa. You know what I'm saying? And when you track our history, understanding that America has a systematic destruction of Black people, and she's been here. So I literally called her, and I said, Mama Nozipo, would you? She was like, oh yeah. Didn't have to think, she was like, yeah, jump on it. And so we met and we went to a flower park and we walked and she said, every time I was calling her Miss Nosy, she said, mama, mama. I said, yes, ma'am. And she broke down the history of just her interview, and please check it out, it's amazing. But she briefly broke down how the America's systemic break and extension of the family was to destruct us. The elders would teach the young people their history. So she would go to school and be taught the lies that the school system fed her. And then she would say, no, I know that's a lie. Not because I guessed, not because somebody told me, because my elders, my grandmother. So just to be able to sit up under her and glean from her and just be a sponge and say, I know nothing, Mama Nozipo, fill me up. And she did just that. Powerful. I love her. She's amazing.
Just to be in her presence is a blessing. So thank you for blessing us.
I am. As soon as I saw it, I was like, when I saw that she made the cover, I was like, yay! So I know I can't wait to read it. I'm just like, I'm so.
Oh, baby, cry, y'all.
Well, I know her personally. Her daughter and I grew up together. Her daughter, we've been friends our whole life. They used to live behind us. She still lives in that same house. So, having years of, hanging out, with her daughter and with her nephew, who is also a really good friend of mine, hearing her stories and then her sister's stories, they were amazing women. And her and Mama Renee McClinton, I'm like, how did y'all get here? Like, how did you pick Dayton? Of all the places that you could be with this greatness, you picked Dayton. And not that Dayton is not worthy, but we are this little small town in the middle of nowhere. And we have all of this richness in these women here. It is incredible. And because of you and your magazine, there's an outlet so other people know it too. Like, I know it, but now because she's in your magazine, everybody's going to get the benefit of that wonderful woman and the knowledge that she brings. So I'm like, hey, I'm excited.
Absolutely. And that is the sole purpose of this business, because when I started, I said, you can start a million businesses, but I really had a ministry mindset and understanding that it's not about me. I can know a whole lot and I can say a whole lot, but we need to even young women. My daughter has interviewed young people. So just to hear the different voices and have that one space to where the voices can, they know that hey, if I want to see Black women, I can go to Speak Woman. That's what I want. And Miss A Slay, oh my God, she's in here. I gotta pause a minute because I've been stalking her too. Like, I've been to so many events, and like I'll be having girl crushes because I see these great women, and I'll be like, oh my God, who knows her? Because I need to know her. And it was like amazing, and to be able to be a platform for women like that is just amazing. And Mama MC, she has like spit so much wisdom and taught us. I will never forget the wisdom, Nikki, that you shared about wives. And I'm like, you know what? I need to get myself together, and that has still been stirred in my spirit to be able to hear the voices of women. So I love what I do. I love it.
And it shows. There's something else that I'm thinking about right now. Let's see. So you said we're touching culture, we're touching age, and I heard you say your daughter interviews too. Something else that we have in common, all of us, no matter what our race is, no matter what our gender is self-care. We all need some form of self-care. And every week we do a self-care assignment. So before we go to the next question, it's probably a little soon, but we'll throw it right in here. What do you do for self-care?
My gosh, that is, okay. So I am very serious about my mental health. I am very serious because of not only seeing, and I've worked inpatient, outpatient, all of that through the jails and all of that. But I've seen where people don't take their mental health seriously and they die. So for me, my mental health is number one. So my self-care has historically included gardening and, just meditating and breathing and all of that. I do that in our support groups, and it just physically changed. But over the last few weeks, I have been transitioning to meatless because a pastor told me that, and it hit me and it has stuck with me. He said that in order to fulfill your ministry, you need to be healthy. We got that. Okay, cool. I get that. But to rephrase it and said to me that our health and self-care is worship to God. So in that, I've increased my meditation and I'm doing my stretches. Like this morning, I did an African medley workout and I was like, oh my God. But after that, I really felt I had my worship music on and everything. So for me, it is worshiping and doing things that pour into my soul, and gardening, because gardening is so spiritual to me, because it shows what you sow, you reap. You plant it. It's not like plant it and get a harvest. No, it's work in that. So for me, it is literally, my self-care is worship, but my worship looks different because I'm not the typical church girl. You got to do this, you got to do that. No, I understand that my walk is with Him. So when I'm worshiping and doing these, so that's self-care to me. You know what I'm saying? It could be just taking a day and playing in the dirt. I'm literally out there like a big kid, just in the dirt. My kid's like, "What'd you get in the house, Mama?" But I come in and I'm like, "Hey," I left out and I was kicking a dog and slapping slapping the cat, and I came in like, hey, okay, y'all hungry, y'all ready? So that is my self-care, to just whatever feels, because you go so much and you have busy schedules, and you do and you do and you do and you do, and that is draining. And so I started having all this weird stuff happen to me, and I'm like, no, I need to change it. So my life is a little hectic, but everything I do in worship. So
yes,
I love it. So before we go, I have to have you talk to us about your women's support group, your online support group. I have been a part of a few of them. I've only talked probably one or two. As a talker, I'd rather just sit back sometimes and listen to other people. But what made you start this online support group, which is absolutely amazing, by the way?
Oh my gosh, thank you for touching on that. So I am everywhere and all the time. So I understand that before all of this stuff happened, we were meeting in person. We would meet monthly, we would meet bi-weekly. And then, of course, the pandemic occurred. And so we went like a month or so without doing it. And women were like, because these aren't Speak Woman magazine platforms. These are personal, private moments. And so I started that understanding that we as women, we as Black women, carry everything on us. And in society and culture everywhere, we are expected to be strong. We are expected to take abuse and keep on, whatever, ride or die, or, go through this and raise the kids and go to work and all of these things that we do, but we don't have a place to just sit and love on one another. And you might go through something and you might talk the whole time, and I'm going through something and I don't say nothing, but I feel better because I can relate to the pain that you have. So understanding that iron sharpens iron. If we are alone, then we're going to be dull, and we're going to be hurt, and we're going to be painful. And we as women, we nurture those things. So we nurture that bitterness, we nurture that pain. But if we have an outlet to where we let that stuff go and then we fill each other up, that's a powerful thing. So we do that every 2 weeks. I'm actually a women's ministry at New Vision. So we'll have one every other Saturday at 2:00. We do that. And then we do the virtual. So for me, it's spiritual, because I'm single and I don't have no friends, so I talk to my sisters. I don't have friends, I got sisters.
We all in the same club. Well, me and you in the same club. This married woman up here.
But even still, and we, they have a whole different struggle, just listening to some women, because how you be like, all I need is a husband, all I need. And they be like, girl, let me tell you, you know what I'm saying? And they love their husband, I be like, okay, but maybe I'm not ready.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I'm just thankful to see yet another sister be such a godly reflection of business. It's different. But yeah, beautiful.
That's all God, because I'm a hot mess. That's why I'm like, that's why God called. I said, you call the crazy people so you can get all the glory.
That's all that matters. Don't that make it easier when you giving God the glory? It makes it so like it's not about me. It makes it so much easier.
Listen, because I pray for you, then I cuss you out. Like Pete, I cut your ear off. Listen, he's still working on me.
Same mouth. It's gonna be all right. We're working on it.
I love it. That is the best. So, as you know, we run out of time. We got about 5-6 minutes left. Really, really quick. Tell us about the Mental Health Symposium, which I've been a part of. It was amazing.
Yes. So this is actually something that we're working on, a digital platform, but it's just information and a place to come share information, because a lot of times the stigma, the misinformation, culture, whatever happens, what happened to mama, all of that plays a part. And so we just want to be a place for information that you can go to. And not only are we giving information, but we're giving resources, because there's a lot of resources out here that people just simply don't know about. So to be a platform to share factual information and then direct them to resources, that's our job.
Yeah, when I was a part of it, I thought it was great. It really helped to take the stigma out of, it's okay to not be okay, or, asking for help, or not even asking for the help, but just somebody saying, hey, this help is out here and it's available and this is where you find it. You may not even realize you needed help until somebody told you that there was help, available. So I thank you for doing that. And, anytime you do it, I'm always down to be a part, whether it's in person or on Zoom, go-to meeting. I am there. You just tell me the day and time. I'm in there.
Amen. Look, we got that recorded. Amen.
Amen.
Told you to that.
Amen. Amen.
All right. So as we wrap up, always, so we have our mindfulness minute. We got our self-care assignment. We have to move on to A Slate's favorite part of the show.
It is our brain science.
Like it.
All right, so for this week, we have the neuroscience of storytelling. According to science, one reason the brain falls in love with a good story is because hearing stories encourages the release of the hormones oxytocin and cortisol. Oxytocin is the hormone that controls things like empathy and social interaction, and cortisol is connected to the stress response. So there's no doubt about it. Stories are powerful. When a person can identify their role in their own story, or as the individual elements of a story, they can begin to understand their lives and the world they are a part of in a way that most people never experience. This idea of healing through storytelling is especially true in the Native American and African American tradition. Storytelling is central to the cultural and oral tradition of these people. So, hearing someone else's story can provide hope to the broken. Often, the only way to get through a tough certain strategy or circumstance is the account of someone else who went through something similar and made it through, wounds and all. When you understand the story you're a part of and your role you are capable of playing, you can heal the wounds of the past and focus on the challenges and joys of the present. It is just as important to share your own stories as it is to hear the stories of others, so healing power can take place and be passed on from generation to generation.
Wow. Drop the mic. That's word.
That's word. And that's exactly what Speak Woman does. I feel like when I do write articles for you, it is a process of me healing, telling my story, and helping other women too. And, I'm always telling people, hey, my friend has a magazine and she's always looking for writers. If you got an idea, you got a poem, you got anything, this is who you contact. She will publish it. And they're like, well, I don't know if I'm publisher ready. I'm like, that's okay. She'll help you with that part too. It's more about getting that story out there and helping women heal. That's the most, important piece of it. So,
absolutely. And just to touch on that, when people ask me what I do, and I always say I help people tell their story, because a lot of times you will have a story, but you don't, me being a writer and editor, I can say, okay, this is a format and not all that, but you fill it up. And so it's important to understand that you are the birth giver and we are the midwives. Those of us that help you express and articulate your story, they are only midwives. You having the baby, girlfriend.
Come on.
That baby.
See,
right poet.
Listen, I'm gonna be like you one day. I'm gonna be up there like, hold on, wait a minute.
You're already there, my God.
Well, we definitely appreciate you coming through, Miss Shonda Campbell. And we know that we can find you at speakwomanmagazine.com. You are on Facebook at Speak Woman Magazine, or on your personal page as Shonda Campbell. And you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you find your favorite podcast. We are the ladies of Fly With Us. Remember this week to love yourself, do what makes you feel good, and sit in that silence. And when you come out of that silence and you're ready to tell your story, hit up Shonda. She can help you get that story out there. I'm Lady Bounce.
And I am A Slate.
And we thank you for joining us.
Bounce.